probably had a server at some point, and you're familiar with what happens when your usage outgrows the resource capabilities of your server. Whether your server is new or old, you'd have to buy more memory or more disk space. Worst case scenario, your server was completely underpowered, and before it was at the end of its life, you needed to upgrade your server, which is easily a $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 project. With cloud computing, as your needs grow, you can simply scale up your usage of that service accordingly with no cap. Cloud is also about diversity. It's about not having all your eggs in one basket. The one basket in this case is your office. It's your server, it's your network, which up until cloud computing, that is where everything lived. And if your network lost its ability to function, or if your server went down, if you lost your connection to the internet, you were out of the water on everything. You couldn't get to your files, you couldn't get to your email, you might not be able to run your CRM system or your line of business application. With cloud computing, if you've diversified your usage of cloud services, these are all running on different service providers, or they're running in service providers that have redundant data centers and backup connections. You've diversified your risk dramatically. Cloud is also about keeping current. And if you think back to Office, Microsoft Office product suite and the way it has always been delivered, you ran perhaps Office 2007. Right, Word 2007, Excel 2007, and you ran that and whatever features it provided you for 3 or 4 years, and then Office 2010 came out and you spent a lot of money and you upgraded to Office 2010, and that was it. You used Office 2010 for another 3 years until Office 2013 came out. But with cloud, your application usually hosted to you via a browser or through some other internet interface. You're getting new features as they become available. If we talk about Microsoft Office 365, Microsoft is releasing new features in their existing applications, enhancements to Word, enhancements to PowerPoint, some of the things that we use today, which might not have been there 2 weeks ago, and for no additional charge show up and they're available to me right away. They also roll out completely new applications, something called Bookings. I just heard about it 2 weeks ago for the first time. I'm not sure if it's available yet, but it's going to be available if it isn't within the next couple of weeks. No additional cost. I now have the ability to do online scheduling for all of my clients. And the last one is keeping costs in line with usage. This has a lot to do with being scalable. The idea that as your business fluctuates in size, if you're seasonal, as you go through some seasonal contractions or increases, as your client base doubles and you need to grow your staff accordingly, you can scale up your infrastructure and your usage of those cloud applications as your business grows without taking on big upgrade expenses. We're going to move on, and I'm just going to remind everybody, if you have questions as I'm talking, go ahead, throw them into the chat. If I don't see those, I'm just going to continue to motor through. Second myth about cloud computing is that it reduces your cost. Right? We talked a lot about cost on that under that first myth. A lot of people think that if I move to the cloud, my cost is going to go down. And this isn't necessarily a yes or no. It may go down. It may not go down. The real difference between cloud computing and hosting your applications and your infrastructure yourself is capital expense versus operational expense, otherwise known as rent or buy, otherwise known as pay me now versus pay me later. We've got, hey, my Nico, I'm just going to pause for a minute. There's some background. You maybe whoever that is.
I hear background music, but I'm not sure who that's coming from. Oh, I found it. Okay, we have it muted.
Sorry about that. You know, Nico, I think if we can, let's do a mute across the board, and we'll just use chat for questions if people have it. So going back to CapEx versus OpEx, right? Buy me now versus pay me later. Operational expense, if you need a new server, if you need a new application, or if you need a new upgrade, you go ahead and you're putting all that money up in front. You're buying the hardware, you're buying the licenses, you're paying for the IT support to make it happen. CapEx. Operational expense, cloud computing, usually there's no upfront charge. to use cloud services. If you were going to move your email, if you were faced with the choice between purchasing a new email server versus moving your email hosting to the cloud, right? A new email server licenses, let's ballpark and say 20 users, about $8,000, maybe $10,000 upfront expense to take on that project. If you were going to take those same 20 users and host them in the cloud, Office 365 is currently $6 a month for their basic email offering at 20 accounts. That'd be $120 a month versus, let's say, $8,000 to build your own, host your own Exchange server. That's a 5-year return. 5 years at $120 a month, about $8,000. 5 years is roughly the lifetime that you can expect of running your own server. Those numbers might sound like they're contrived for the example I just came up with, but they're pretty close to accurate there. Cloud computing, it does not necessarily reduce your cost. It definitely amortizes your cost over time. Moving on, is cloud the cheapest way of getting IT support? Right, this is a question that I face as an IT provider all the time. Well, if I move all my services to the cloud, that means I don't have to pay you anymore to do anything, right? And while that may be true in some aspects, it's not always true. Cloud services and the support that those service providers are going to give you is going to be limited to the scope of their application. Right, so if you, let's say, use Dropbox Business, please, not Dropbox Personal. If you decide to use Dropbox for Business to replace your file server and host all your company's files there, if you try to open a file and you get an error, Microsoft Word, then you're not going to be able to contact Dropbox and have them troubleshoot that for you. If you do open up the file, but you can't email it, or you can't print it, well, if you can't print it, you're still going to need to contact someone to take a look at the setting on your local machine in your local network. If you're trying to email it, maybe you're using Office 365 for email, you could then make a second call over to Microsoft, try to see if they'll help you configure your Outlook maybe and find out why you can't email. If they find out that your Outlook is configured properly, that's going to be the end of the service that they're going to provide you. There is still all that area that ties all these services together and ties these services to your end device that still need IT support. You need to look at this. You need to look at your IT support footprint from a complete perspective, all the way, starting with you as the end user and what you're going to be doing, all the way through to the service provider and where your data is going to be located, where your application is going to be hosted. The other thing you want to know about these cloud services, a lot of them don't have service level agreements. So if you host your CRM system and you have a problem with a feature, you call them. There's no guaranteed response time that they will give you for how long it will take them to get back to you or how long it will take them to fix that problem. Moving your applications and moving the data to the cloud can definitely change the role of your IT provider. Your provider should be someone who is capable of giving you a holistic view of your entire IT infrastructure to be able to support your end users, as well as providing you with that ongoing strategy and consulting that you're going to need as a business owner as the cloud continues to evolve and as IT support continues to develop. Myth number 4, the cloud should be used for everything, right? Well, if the cloud is so good, then I should put everything to the cloud and I'll be great, right? That's what we like to call cloud washing. Cloud providers love to tell you that. The cloud is 1,000 times better than doing it yourself. So this is one where it needs to be looked at on an individual basis. The cloud may be best for a business for everything that an individual business does. It may not be for everything that another business does. If you go back to the first slide where we talked about what the cloud was, the benefits of the cloud, scalability, flexibility, gaining the current features, other benefits we haven't talked about like access from everywhere, these are things that should be considered with every application or every bit of your infrastructure that you want to move to the cloud. The other factor you could consider here, and we'll get into this a little bit more at the very end, is disaster recovery. and this is a big one, if you are running your own environment, well, then you've got to be responsible for the disaster recovery. What happens when your server goes down? How fast can you get up and running again? And at what point was your last backup? How much data do you lose? If you move to the cloud provider is going to be managing that disaster recovery for you, but you're not in control of the time in which it takes to recover or the last backup point, which they'll recover for you. Big factor in the analysis on what should be moved up to the cloud and what's better off staying with you. Now, if you do make the decision to move one or more than one applications to the cloud, you should have one vendor for everything, right? Because then it's all nicely tied together and it's easy to use. And this is another one that should be looked at situationally. Right now, let's say before you move things to the cloud, you didn't have one vendor for everything. You had most likely Microsoft Word, Excel, and Outlook for your productivity tools. Maybe you had your own email server, or maybe you hosted your services at your email at Rackspace or Intermedia. You had a different vendor for antivirus support. You had maybe an AVG or a Symantec or a McAfee. Your CRM system could have been provided by Symantec, or it could have been provided by Sage. Maybe it was already in the cloud and provided by Salesforce. You've never had one vendor providing all of your service. The cloud does not change that, right? Just because a cloud provider is great at hosting email does not mean they're going to be great at hosting your CRM system. Two very different skill sets, and you want to make sure that the vendor that you choose is going to be the vendor that meets your needs for that specific application the best. You're going to want to consider things like sharing data between applications.
Hold on, relax.
Do you do that? What's the best way to do that? You need to consider doing a data sharing between applications and how well that goes. You're going to need to consider security for different platforms. Does your data have different security needs? And of course, you're going to need to consider all your eggs in one basket, because as you know, the cloud is still a computing platform, and computers are not perfect. They will still have problems. So what if we move to the cloud? But that's not for mission critical use, right? The cloud, it's good to host my emails and it's good to host my files, but I would never want to trust my order entry system to the cloud, or I would never want to trust something as important as my CRM system to the cloud, right? Well, for that, I would say there's a little-known company called Amazon. They've got an order entry system in the cloud. They do a pretty good job with it. And I would venture to say that their order entry system is probably mission critical to them. And it seems to work fairly well. This is a decision that needs to be made on an application by application basis, or even on a service by service basis. Is that application better hosted in the cloud, or is it better hosted on your own infrastructure? What are your critical applications? For most companies, it's going to be email, for sure, your ability to communicate with your customers. File sharing, most likely critical. CRM system, whether that's a Salesforce or an Excel spreadsheet or something in between, also going to be critical. Look at your critical processes. How do you interact with your clients? How do you share information with your clients? How do you share information internally in your customers? You can even look at your infrastructure. It's possible to take a computer, a desktop computer, and cloud host that. And there is situation I would consider that pretty mission critical. I know I'd be absolutely out of business if it wasn't for my laptop. It's possible to even take that and host your Windows desktop in the cloud somewhere. There's lots of advantages to doing that. There's lots of disadvantages as well. You need to consider, as we said before, operational expense versus capital expense. Consider the cost of support, the cost of the hardware and the cost of the software licenses, cost of your client access, where and how you need to access that data. Do you just access that data in your office, or does that data get accessed all over the place while you and your salespeople and your staff are out and about, and you need it not only at your desk but also on your iPhone and on your tablet, possibly even on your watch. And you also want to consider, of course, what other systems does that data integrate with, and how do you share that data between those systems? Myth number 7, because the CEO says so. That's a valid cloud strategy, right? This is one we hear very, very often. We get the call, well, my boss said to me we have to move to the cloud, so we want to do that. And whereas the CEO may have great ideas, he or she may be great at running a business, I'll venture that the CEO is not a certified professional IT advisor. They may have heard great things about the cloud, and they may be right, but you need to do that proper evaluation before you can say, let's go do this. Right? There's an IT service provider I know, a guy in a similar business to what we do, and he had a senior partner at a law firm come to him. This is probably 8 or 9 years ago. So the cloud is there, but it's not this big, amazing thing yet. And the senior partner comes to him and he says, I'm moving to the cloud. I want you to move me to the cloud. The IT provider, this guy Dave, said to him there was no valid business reason to move him to the cloud. As a matter of fact, moving him to the cloud might be more expensive. It might even be more risky because there was not a good place that he could host his data at that time for the right cost. And the senior partner insisted, no, my friends tell me move it to the cloud. That's going to save my business. So this guy, perhaps the IT provider, perhaps not the most honest IT provider, but still very good technically, decides that he's going to host this guy in the cloud. He moves the service to his garage. He brings in a big fat fiber line pipe, gets a generator, starts billing the law firm for this, says to the CEO, your servers aren't here anymore, they're in the cloud. Theoretically they were. Senior partner was thrilled beyond belief, but it added no value to his business. Right? On the flip side, there could have been situations where that would have been a very viable strategy. If they needed the scalability of moving to the cloud, if they needed the ability to get to their data from everywhere, not just from their desktop, and they didn't want to open their office network up to the rest of the world, to the rest of the internet, then it could have been a very good cloud strategy. The CEO may drive it. It certainly helps when you've got senior management buy-in. Just because they say we're moving to the cloud, I heard the cloud is great, doesn't make it the right decision. It may make it the right thing for you to go ahead and evaluate. Myth number 8, well, if my data is in the cloud and the cloud is shared by everybody else, then obviously I'm less secure, right? Well, that could be the case, but it might not be the case. We'll look at this in 2 ways. If you host your data in the cloud, you're hosting it with a giant company, let's say Microsoft, right? And I move all my email and I move all my file share to Office 365 and SharePoint and OneDrive. Well, Microsoft is a big target, so therefore my data is going to be it's going to be less secure because Microsoft is more likely to get targeted by the bad guys. That may be true. The flip side of that is Microsoft can afford the best IT professionals to secure that data. And I don't know everybody on this webinar today, but I'll venture that Microsoft can probably hire the top IT security talent. And most of us will be able to hire the local or regional IT provider. There's a pretty good chance that the behemoth like Microsoft has got better security knowledge, better data security experience than the local or regional provider. Moving to the cloud and using your regional provider to help do that can really give you the best of both worlds. The other thing to consider is the rise of ransomware. I'll assume that everybody on this call has heard of CryptoLocker or CryptoWall. Ransomware is the way that the bad guys in the last few years have come up with, they finally figured out how to monetize viruses and malware. They infect your system. They encrypt your data so you can no longer get it. It's now been encrypted. They have the key to unlock it. and they will sell you that key. So maybe for $500, maybe for $5,000. You don't know until you reach out to them. It's a lot easier for these guys to go broad and target hundreds of thousands of small businesses, knowing that even if 1% get infected, and for each of those people infected, they make $1,000, they're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars with that approach, and they're completely ignoring the behemoths like Microsoft and Home Depot and Target and Yahoo and all the rest of those large attacks that we've heard about recently. So there is an argument to be made that says even though your data is in the cloud and that's potentially a larger target, it's not really a larger target. It's perhaps a more well-known target, but the small businesses are actually the larger target and easier to get into. The other aspect of security that we want to talk about is actually security of your data from the provider itself. And I'll give one example here. Everyone's going, well, what do you mean? I'm putting my data with the provider, aren't they securing it? They may be securing it from the rest of the world. But whenever you sign up for a new service and you buy a new piece of software, there's that long list of legalese, the end user license agreement, that nobody ever reads. There are cloud providers out there, especially the ones that have free services and then premium upgrades, where in their free services, it's written into the end user license agreement that they have access to look at your data without your knowledge, to remove your data without your knowledge if they find your data violates copyright laws or trademark laws or in any other way infringes upon what they would consider acceptable use. And in some cases, like Facebook, they actually have the ability to use your data without your knowledge and without your consent. The premium editions usually don't. The premium editions, the end user license agreements are written much more secure. They're written in a way that protects your data. They can't do anything with your data without your knowledge. In the best services, your data is actually encrypted, and they cannot even get to your data unless you provide them with the encryption key. Big difference between the free ones and the premium services, and definitely an area of IT security that almost nobody has started to consider yet. Myth number 9, migrating to the cloud is always a hassle. I've got all this data and all this software on my local networks, and it's going to be expensive. It's going to be nearly impossible to copy this up. Well, there's no yes or no answer to this. Maybe it's going to be expensive. Maybe it is going to be a hassle, but it might not. You can be sure if you're considering a CRM system like Salesforce. Let's say that your CRM system prior to this was Microsoft Outlook. You used a shared context folder, and I want to migrate everything up to Salesforce. Well, you're not the first person who wants to do that, I guarantee. And Salesforce probably has migration tools which will take your Outlook data and convert it for you right into a Salesforce data. The key here with migrating your data up to the cloud is to do your homework up front. Don't just dive into your cloud system, go to the data import page and start clicking through the wizards. Right? There's two things that can happen here. There's two ways this can go. Either it's not a complex migration and it will go very well. And if it's not a complex migration and you do spend the time and money to have an evaluation done first, that evaluation will be quick, and quick usually means inexpensive, and then you'll have a good data migration. The other way to look at that is, well, if the data migration is more complex, well, in that case, if you do your homework first, the homework is definitely going to take longer. Longer means more expensive. It's going to cost you more money up front to do that migration, but the actual process of moving your data from on-premises to the cloud, it's going to go seamless. It's going to go without problems because you've planned it out with an IT professional before you hit go. If you look at the other way of doing that, well, it's going to be complex and I don't want to do my homework, usually because we've had this happen with clients, I don't want to pay for the evaluation up front, I just want you to do it. And the first time that they look at the migration is when they've actually hit go, well, in that case, the process is going to take longer. Definitely going to be errors during that process. Anytime there's errors with the data migration, there's risk of data loss. It's going to take longer. It will be chaotic. Your expectations will not be met. You might have expected the migration to take a day, but it was more complex, so it took 4 or 5 days. And with all of that, it's always going to be more expensive. It may come out the same as if you had paid for the analysis and done the homework up front. It'll certainly be a more pleasant experience. And the complex ones with data loss and the risk and the problems and the delays may wind up being more expensive in the end. Moving on to myth number 10. We talked a little bit about free software versus premium software. A lot of people think that free is just a less expensive version of premium, right? In some cases, that's true. We already talked about the end user license agreement with regards to Dropbox and what they can, how they, in the free version, they can see your data, delete your data, use your data. In the premium version, they can't because your data is encrypted. Some of the differences between free and premium: support. There are service providers out there with free, you don't get any support. The premium version, you have an 800 number you can call, or a support email address that you can use for support. Free and premium, you may have differences in the amount of data that you can store on that cloud service. You may have differences in the amount of usage you can have, how much bandwidth you're allowed to have, how many calls you're allowed to make, how many records you can have. You also may have fewer features in the free version than you do in the premium version. There are plenty of examples where the free version may meet the business needs. Right? We use a tool called Slack in our office, which is a cloud-based group chat software. It gives us the ability to chat together, have private conversations. It's searchable. It integrates with Office 365. It integrates with Dropbox. We chose to use the free version because the free version limited us to 10,000 messages being searchable. So message 10,001, the oldest message fell off and I can no longer get to the content of those older messages via the search feature. Well, we have other ways of storing our data and doing our searches, so we didn't need that feature in Slack. So we went ahead with the free version. There are other cloud-based applications we use, like our VoIP phone system, like our ticketing system, where a free version was not going to have the features we needed, and we went ahead with the paid-for premium version. Like everything else that we've said so far in this webinar, it's a case-by-case decision, and you've got to do the analysis up front. So those are our 10 myths. Now we've got 2 bonus myths, right? Bonus myth number 11. Bonus myth number 11 says, I can't back up my cloud data. So if I put everything I have on Salesforce, what happens if they go out of business? What happens if they lose my data? Am I going to get my data back? That's a good, legitimate concern, right? If you were running your own CRM system, your own email system, you would never even fathom running those systems without a proper backup and disaster recovery solution. If you move your email to the cloud, or if you move your applications to the cloud, you're trusting that cloud provider to have the integrity of your data, to have your best interests in mind, to know, to be able to restore that data in a time frame that's acceptable to you. That's a lot of control to lose, to give up. However, there are solutions out there which will allow you to back up your cloud data. There are separate services out there, companies like Backupify. Backupify will link to Office 365. It will copy all of the data in your Office 365 tenant to your Backupify account. So if something should happen to that data and Microsoft can't restore it, Backupify will be able to restore it for you. If something should happen and Office 365 goes out of business, not going to happen, but let's use a smaller example. Joe's Garage email service provider, providing Office 365 services. If they go out of business, well, your data is still stored at Backupify. And Backupify can replicate your data to other places, so you can even have multiple copies. You can also do your own backups. We have plenty of clients that use Salesforce as a CRM. They just want to know that they've got a copy of their client list, their accounts, their contacts, and their leads. So they do nightly or weekly exports of their data to spreadsheets. We've got an automated process in place which runs those reports, exports it to a spreadsheet, puts it on on a file server somewhere, on our file share service somewhere. So if their data in Salesforce ever gets corrupted, they don't have to rely on Salesforce to get that data back. They can use their own tools to get that data back. And the last myth we're going to talk about, the cloud is up 100% of the time, all the time, every day. I do remember a time, and my kids reminded me of this a couple of days ago when we lost power and internet access in a snowstorm. They said to me, Dad, gosh, when you were a kid, it didn't mean anything when the internet went down. There was no internet. I was like, you're right, there wasn't. We did other things, right? We read a book, we hung out with our friends perhaps. Business, well, that was okay. Most of my data was on my computer, so I was able to keep running it. Even if the internet goes down, I still have access to my local data. Right? I still perhaps had access to my local applications. There are many things that can go down when you're hosting your things in the cloud. Your endpoint could go down, your tablet could break, your laptop could break, Windows could get corrupted, it won't boot. Your connection to the internet could go down if you're working from your office, if you're working from home. The cloud provider itself could even go down, and I know there may be some naysayers there, but just a few months ago, Dropbox, Netflix, and a number of other large providers went down for 4 or 5 hours because of what was called a distributed DNS attack, distributed DOS attack in the northeastern United States. Netflix has got some pretty good redundancy built into their network, and even taken down for a few hours by this. Gmail has gone down. Yahoo, we all know the woes of Yahoo now. Cloud services are not 100% of the time. They are still computing services. They will go down. When they do go down, like anything else in your business, you're going to want to make sure that you've got a plan to execute. You've thought it through in advance. What happens when we can't get to this service? How do we continue to run our business during that time? All of this leads to the evaluation. There are going to be applications that can be moved to the cloud, maybe should be moved to the cloud. There are going to be applications that should be moved to the cloud. There's no business, there's no reason to. They'd be more expensive. Each one of these needs to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. But as you're doing that, you still need to make sure that you're looking at the big picture. What do you want your IT infrastructure, your IT presence to look like over time? There are many factors that can play into that. Your office, are you moving? Are you thinking about getting rid of your office? Is your office growing? Do you have to double in size? The infrastructure that you have, is it old? Is it new? Does it have to be replaced? Is it expandable? Do you need the new features? You want to look at the costs of all of this. You want to look at the features and the benefits of the software that you use and the cloud alternatives. You want to look at your disaster recovery for sure. We didn't use the technical terms RTO and RPO, but you're going to want to look at that RTO, recovery time objective. How fast can we get up and running again if something goes down? RPO, recovery point objective. At what point was my backup last taken? How much data have I lost between that and when that backup happened and when we went down? And you're going to want to look at how much data you share amongst applications. Does your Salesforce data need to integrate with your email system? Does that need to integrate with your order processing system? And does that need to integrate with your accounting system? You're going to want to use an IT professional to do this evaluation, someone who knows the cloud applications, someone who knows your infrastructure. Look at the whole picture, come up with an entire cloud plan, and then look at individually each of the elements and make those decisions onto when, if you should move them, how much it would cost to move them, and how you would move them. There's a white paper. There will be some follow from this. This webinar has been recorded. We're going to post that online. My Nico will send all that information out to you. But before we wrap it up, my Nico, are there any questions that we have that have come up during the presentation?
Yes, we do have one question regarding QuickBooks. So I'll just ask the question and see if you're able to respond. So one of our attendees has been thinking about moving their files to the cloud. Is there the only other thing, I was thinking, can we run QuickBooks from the same cloud as our other files?
Sure, that's a great question, and that's exactly how we want to approach this, right? So let me break it down a little bit. We've got some data files that need to be shared, and we've got QuickBooks, which is the bookkeeping application. They exist in the same business, but they serve two different purposes. There are certainly services out there which will allow you to host your QuickBooks and also give you file sharing capabilities so you could move your data files there as well. It may be cost effective to do that. There may be some integration features between your data files and QuickBooks that they offer you. But I'd also encourage you to look at two separate services as well, because those are three business operations, file sharing and QuickBooks. There may not be a driving reason to put them both on the same service. You might want to look at a strictly hosted QuickBooks service and a service that just provides file sharing as well.
Thank you.
I see the chat now, Tina. Let's see, what services should we be looking at for QuickBooks and data file? So Tina, that's going to be in the white paper. What I didn't want to do on this webinar was recommend specific services. We're trying to remain neutral. But we will send you the white paper in the follow-up discussion here, and then we can have a conversation after the fact about the pros and cons of some of the services that are available. All right, so as we wrap it up, and I want to thank everybody for coming, my Nico is going to be sending out a survey. We love your feedback here. We'd love to know if this covered the information that you were hoping to get. We'd also love to know what else you'd like to hear us cover going forward. This is the fourth event of the Know It All 2017 series. Our next event is next month on April 11th. We're going to be talking about cloud applications and the return on investment. So we're going to get really deep into the evaluation that we just ended this webinar on. And if you'd like to attend that, you can register for that right now at cloudroi.eventbrite.com. My Nico, why don't you throw that into the chat as well, give people the means of clicking on it. After April 11th, we've got a bunch more of this for the rest of this year. We're going to talk about outsourcing your IT, whether you should or shouldn't, and how to do that and how to make that decision. We're going to talk about what hybrid outsourcing is, where you keep some of your own IT staff but outsource certain IT functions. Compliance, we're going to take a break for the summer. We're going to come back in September. We're going to talk about compliance, HIPAA compliance, financial compliance, industry compliance, compliance your clients may hold you to, even if they're not regulatory compliance requirements. October is Cybersecurity Month as well. I would not be a good IT provider if I didn't talk about cybersecurity. There are some great past webinars that Cheryl and I have done this year about cybersecurity, not business cybersecurity, but also personal cybersecurity. You can get to those past webinars at cmitsolutions.com/Monroe or /Grand Central. We've got all of our previous webinars for the 2017 series archived up there. I want to thank you all for coming, for giving me your time this morning. It's been my pleasure to give you this information. We hope to see you all again at our next webinar. And with that, my Nico, I think you can wrap it up.
Perfect. Thanks. Bye.